Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Being Human US Season 1, Episodes 1 and 2. I say Being Human US because there is also a Being Human UK version also that is to be fairly similar. But even the United States actors would go on and say, hey, go on and watch the UK version because that show is pretty good. So, I would go on to have seen a number of interviews, featurettes, and all kinds of stuff about the show. I had watched numerous seasons of the show. I think I got around like the third season, so yeah. So I can go on and kind of just talk about like further past what is to happen with these characters beyond just these two episodes. It seems that a lot of people are to go on and want my interviews to be a lot shorter, so I'm like, great. Like, I don't have to go on and say every single detail, but I can also go on within this interview and just kind of mention certain things about what happens in these episodes, but also what is to go on, and specifically in this one, kind of tell you what happens with these characters to maybe get you even more interested in the show than maybe if you were not ever before. And plus, it's also really convenient because it's available on Amazon right now. So check it out that way if you have a Amazon Prime subscription. So, with that said, we have these three characters. So, first, let's go on and let's talk about Josh. So, Josh, of course, is to work with Aiden at this hospital. And so Josh, of course, is to be the one who is to turn into a werewolf. And so Josh, we come to find out early on in this show, was to have almost gotten married. Then he runs away from that marriage and decides to somehow find Aiden, and they decide to live with one another, but then they want to even further buy a house together. So we have Josh in these two episodes, and so Josh, we find out early on that he had gone on to camp with his friends, and his friends had gotten mauled and attacked by an animal of sorts, and at some point we'll even go on to find out who that person was. And so Josh was to have gotten scraped, but he was still alive. So Josh was to eventually turn into a werewolf, of course, and so now once a month he goes on to turn into a werewolf, but it even seems that he does that way more often. So, than just one day out of the month. But so, we then have Aiden. And so, Aiden, we find out fairly early that Aiden is to be fighting the thirst of blood, because of course Aiden is a vampire. So we have Aiden who is to work at a hospital, and oftentimes he is to take blood bags and try to get blood that way. But then of course we go on and have Aiden who, considering he is to work as a surgeon and he is to be around blood a lot, maybe at certain points we have Aiden that is just to succumb to the weakness of being with a woman or another person and wanting to drain them of blood, and what is to go on and happen once that mistake happens. So we come to find out in these episodes that Aiden was to have been turned via a character named Bishop, who is to really want to go on and persuade Aiden to come back into the fold of being one of them, or the vampires. And the further and further we have this conflict between the two of these characters, the more that it'll probably end up leading to one another's death. And of course, it'll get there at some point. It'll escalate to that point. But so we have Aiden, who is to have gone on and been sired by Bishop, and so when Aiden is to be now with Josh, it's kind of seen as like, man, like really, like you're hanging out with a werewolf, like but it's like, well, hey, it just works out. And plus, also, since Aiden is to really want to step away from his kind, and even his kind is to go on and tell Aiden is, well, hey, like without us being there for you, like it kind of really feels like you're left out in the cold now, aren't you? And we could have Aiden that could feel that way, but also could be glad that he is to be not a part of that fold, or not to be forced into doing certain tasks. So, because their goals are to kind of turn influential people so vampires can take much more control, and we start to see certain people who are to be vampires who are to really have the ability to control certain aspects of the world. But anyways, so we go on to meet up with Sally in this episode, which of course she is to be the ghost. Out of the three people, it's much easier to figure out who that is. So Sally, we come to find, is to have died within this house. They go on and explain that within these two episodes. And so Sally, of course, is to be very afraid of leaving her own home, because eventually she states in this episode that she is just kind of scared that if she leaves the door of this home, maybe she'll just float away forever. And so, yeah, I can understand being terrified of, like, what would be beyond the doors of this home be like. But at some point, we'll have Sally, who is to get guidance from another ghost who seems to know certain abilities or certain things that a ghost can do. Sally will go on and find about the afterlife and how she should really go on and try to figure out how she should get her own door, and that door is to lead her to her resting place, whether it's to be heaven or whether it's to be the other end of things. But either way, that door will at some point possibly come for a lot of people that Sally is to help along the way, and then maybe it'll come for Sally herself. But then again, we have Sally that eventually goes on to become a powerful ghost. At a certain point, going on to maybe having too much power, maybe kind of trapping herself in these situations where she has kind of overused her power and has to kind of fight her way through this, or figure out a way to desperately outsmart or possibly strategically make her way out of these situations. But so, being very vague, but also telling you a little bit somewhere down the road. So, these characters will go on and find love, it seems. And how far that relationship really does go, will go on and kind of tell you well beyond this first season, of course. So, with that said, let's kind of go on and just kind of quickly kind of go over what happens in these two episodes. as if this is to be kind of a spoiler, but I'm really just going to kind of go on and kind of quickly go through some stuff and talk a little bit about the episodes, and maybe in other reviews, if people are going like, wow, like this is way shorter than what you would normally do, but like, well, yeah, I'm sorry, like it seems that people want a shorter review, so I'm happy to give them that. So with that said, let's go on and let's get into just talking about these two episodes. So we of course have Aiden in the beginning of this uh, being with Rebecca. And so both Aiden and Rebecca, I guess, had worked together in this hospital. And so Aiden is to be talking about in the early parts of this episode how death is victory. Because technically, for Aiden, considering he is a vampire and he can't die from a natural cause, then yeah, like to have Aiden start to see other people pass away and he can never get that kind of release, he is to maybe even feel envious of those people. So we have Aiden that goes into Rebecca's place, as he is to have easily won her over. So she just starts to strip down and want them both to get into bed. And so Aiden goes on and bites her and kills her, we are to assume. So we have Aiden that is to, of course, call Marcus and tell him that he needs to go on and pick this girl up. So, and that is, of course, while Josh is kind of turning into a werewolf. We had this kind of whole opening scene where Aiden is to talk about you looking in the mirror, and there'd be certain things when you would look at yourself in the mirror, you're like, man, like suck in that gut, or uh, or whiten your teeth or something like that. So, and that everyone has a dark side, but there's sometimes where some people like only have a dark side. So we go into this episode and we have Josh, who is to wake up the very next day, deer next to him, and so he walks with just wearing a dress to Aiden's car, and so both of them are going to go on and plan to get a house together. And so we have the people realize that Rebecca has gone missing, and so we have Kara, which immediately I was like, okay, like what do I recognize Kara from? And I'm like, oh my god, she was from The Boys. Good, she went on and got like further work. That's great. But I was like, okay, like why does she look so familiar? And I had to kind of look her up on IMDb, and like, oh my god, she was on The Boys. Good for her. Yeah, good for you. She was getting work. So we have Josh and Aiden that have Kara, and she's kind of really throwing herself at Aiden. And so we're finding that, of course, Rebecca is going missing. And so it seems that, like, Kara is making this whole joke about, like, well, hey, like, we should go on and have, like, a candlelight visual or something like that. So, but yeah, like, but Kara is trying really hard to get to Aiden. And so we have Josh in this episode who goes to find that his sister is to make her way to this hospital, and she of course to be here because of her lover is to needed some emergency care because of her arm. So Josh goes on to kind of mistakenly bump back into his sister. So his sister is to want to run to get to Josh, like, well, hey, like, what happened to you? Like, you just ran off. You just ran away. You just kind of left us a note, but to not worry about you. But like we can't help but worry about you. So, because of course Josh was to kind of run off from his marriage, and so yeah, so we have Josh that goes on to try and tell his sister Emily that it's like, well, hey, like, I can't really go on and explain why I left, and please don't even go on and tell anybody that you saw me here. And so Emily's like, okay, that's strange. So we have Emily forcibly throughout these 2 episodes wants an answer from her brother of why he left. And so we, of course, have Josh, who goes on with Aiden to find this kind of condemned place where they can kind of put him in to kind of lock him away for when he kind of turns into a werewolf. We have Emily going on and going into that room that Josh is in while he's trying to turn. We have Emily that wants answers. And so Emily is to kind of close the door behind her, and Josh is to realize, like, oh my god, like, Emily, I am probably going to kill you because I'm going to turn into a werewolf soon. And so Josh frantically tries to call Aiden. He even calls Sally when eventually he really is to meet up with her and kind of get to know her, because we'll get to that here shortly. So we quickly come to find out that Aiden had gone on to kill this girl of what we thought is to have legitimately been like, okay, we're never going to see this girl again. But instead, we would find out that Rebecca had gotten turned by Bishop. And so now Rebecca is going on and kind of like creepingly like stalking both Aiden and Josh and trying to kind of intervene in their lives. And so we have Aiden that goes on to find that Rebecca is still alive, and so now Aiden is very upset with Marcus. Not only is Aiden upset with Marcus because Marcus is trying to go on and find people in the hospital that can be turned, and Aiden's like, well, like, no, like, this is my territory, this is my place. You guys can go on and turn anybody else anywhere, but not here. Like, this is my this is where I'm here. So we go on to have Bishop, who is to talk to Aiden, simply because we have Bishop who's like, oh, Aiden, he's coming back. Like, he has started to kill again. All right, like, maybe I can kind of put him back into the fold. And Aiden's like, no, that was a simple mistake. And so we have Bishop who is trying to curb the suspicion of Aiden killing Rebecca, even so much so that he is to persuade the other detective to just like, hey, like, let this go. Like, Aiden didn't do this. And he is to kind of mind control him, this other detective, to not have suspicions of Aiden. So we have me also need to state that these vampires are not to be immediately killed by sunlight. And even so much so that we would go on and just kind of see them wearing sunglasses, or a lot of times they would just kind of be in the shade. So quite oftentimes, more than not, like, we wouldn't have these characters be immediately killed by sunlight. It's just not the way it works in the show. And so we have in this story where, or in these 2 episodes, where Aiden is to get hit on by Kara. And so much so that she is to try and, like, ask him out. And Aiden's like, well, no, like, I'm not a lot of fun. And so Kara backs off. So Aiden eventually goes on to a bar anyways to find Kara being there. And so now that Kara won't let this go, Aiden then has to go on and desperately call Josh before he is to go on and turn again into a werewolf, hoping that he will make his way, Josh, to kind of intervene. And because, of course, Aiden is very tempted. So when Josh goes on to get to this bar, we find that Rebecca makes her way there and is to try and stop Kara from getting with Aiden, because Rebecca had been in Kara's shoes, and it's like, oh, like, so he's going to go on and he's going to manipulate you, and he's going to kind of self-deprecate himself, or like, she's to go on and kind of figure out all the cues and the way of which that this guy has kind of tricked women before. So we go on to eventually find if Aiden is to not kill Kara, then Rebecca will go on and do it for him. Because Rebecca, of course, is talking about all the people that she's going to eventually kill. And so I guess Kara is to be the first on her chopping block. Going on to also have Rebecca mentioning about how she would possibly kill her father or her siblings' kids, and just kind of wiping them all out. And so we have Aiden then is to tell Rebecca, it's like, well, hey, like, if you do any of that, like, you're going to regret it for as long as you are to live. So we go on and have both Aiden and Josh meet up with Sally. And so what happens is that both of them are in the place together, and we all of a sudden have Sally who's kind of moving around the house. And Josh immediately thinks that they already have a burglar. So, because they have just gone on, both Josh and Aiden, to have bought this house from Danny. And so they go on and they ask, like, Danny, it's like, okay, like, why did you sell the house? It's like, well, somebody just recently died in that. It's like, well, shouldn't you disclose that? And Danny is like, well, I didn't think about it. And so, but Danny is to go on and tell these guys the truth, that Sally is to have died. Funny enough, the way that Sally is to die, the further and further we get into this story, the more we start to unravel the Sally story, and the more and more the way of Sally's death is to be really interesting. And eventually we'll find out that Danny is to have had a lover, and so many other things that go into this story. And so it gets really, really juicy and really good. So, but going back to both Josh and Aiden finding Sally. So they go into the room, and so all of a sudden we have Sally, who is starting to quote a Bon Jovi song. And so we come to find that the guys are like, okay, like, why are you trying to scare me with Bon Jovi? And then she's like, oh my god, like, so, like, you could see me, like, you can hear me. And they're like, yeah. And so she's like, oh my god. So Sally has gone on to, like, watch over both Aiden and Josh without her realizing it. But it seems now they can go on and see her and hear her. So now she's like, oh my god, like, thank god, like, you guys are here, because now, like, I don't have to go on and just kind of be alone, because we have this character that had gone on to just kind of haunt the place. And we even have Danny, who is asking both Josh and Aiden. It's like, well, hey, like, does this place seem very haunted to you? Because, of course, Danny is to come in realizing that there is plumbing problems and try to fix it via these 2 episodes. And we'll come to find out Danny doesn't really know about plumbing, because, of course, he doesn't. So we go on into these 2 episodes, and so we come to find out, either specifically from Danny, or even, like, the kind of showcasing or kind of replaying, especially within the second episode. So we have Sally that was to go on and fall down the stairs, and we see this kind of crack in of course, where she fell. And we go on and are to showcase kind of the funeral process. Sally's to go on and see all of her relatives at this place, kind of mourning Sally's loss. And we go on and have this kind of monologue at the beginning of the second episode, where it's kind of Sally's time and her talking about things. Sally at one point is to even be a ghost and try to, like, recreate her own death, but like, of course, like, it's not like she's gonna go on and get a afterlife like thing so fairly quickly if she goes on and does that. But so we have Sally that is to be getting a phone call from Josh, because he is desperately hoping that maybe Sally can go on and call or figure out how to get out of her place to try and get to Aiden, so Aiden can know that Josh is in trouble, once Josh is to be turning while with Emily in the same room as him. So we come to find that Aiden ends up with Bishop, who is to say that's like, well, hey, like, I need to talk to you more about that girl, because it seems that they went on and they found out that, like, you were the culprit. And Aiden would even go on and call the family to tell them that their daughter is dead. So Bishop is to just grab Aiden and is to take him to this kind of, like, blood bank kind of place, where we have these women that are to go on and let Aiden kind of take a part of their blood, and it's to kind of be like almost like a strip joint, but also to be a kind of blood giving kind of location. So we have Aiden that all of a sudden is to notice that Bishop is kind of lurking in the shadows, kind of like watching and enjoying, like, like, I'm gonna get him to turn. And so Aiden kind of runs out of that place and is to grab his phone and realize that Josh has called. So Aiden is to get the answer, the voicemail of this call, to come to find out that Josh is to have desperately needed Aiden's help. And so Aiden runs to this location, opens this door, grabs Emily, closes the door right before Josh completely turns. And so Aiden and Emily both are to talk. And so Aiden would go on and state that that Josh has a condition and that's why he left. And Emily's like, okay, what's the condition? And Aiden's like, well, you have to have your brother explain that. So we have them both talk about how there is to be a curse and so on and so forth that we all have to bear. And we have Emily who tells Aiden, it's like, dude, you're hot. Like, what kind of curse do you really have? So we have eventually where Josh is to tell his sister Emily that he wants no like connection with her. He wants no like part of her, and like that's final. And so he just kind of walks away from her at the end of all this. So even though we have Emily that just kind of wants to rub it in her brother's face that she was to go on and like have an amazing woman and so on and so forth. So with that said, yeah, like that covers most of the bases. I kind of in a roundabout way, kind of present certain things and then represent them because, like, how I wanted to do this was kind of cover certain characters and kind of get that out of the way, but also there could really be other events of which that I didn't cover. So that is what it is. But yeah, but other than that, I think I'm just gonna go on and call this one what it is, and hopefully have this be a little bit shorter than probably what it would normally be. But yeah, but I think I still went on to cover about 30 minutes of this, so if that's not short enough, then oh well. When really looking at it, 30 minutes is decent enough. I probably could have gone on and been twice this long, compared to how the actual show is to be like an hour and 20 some odd minutes per. So I kind of broke that in half, even more so. So with that said, hopefully people are really interested in Being Human. I will definitely want to go on and cover more of the show. But quite often, more than likely, there's a lot of times where the first review will be amazing, and then anything after that will go nowhere, or at a lot of points, stuff will go nowhere, and then I'll just be very just sad and disappointed. But I'll really just understand because it's like, well, like nothing in YouTube really goes that well ever. So that's kind of where I'm just kind of stuck every day, figuring out what is to be the best thing that I could find for YouTube, and hopefully, hope that whatever I was to put out today for this video was the best I could do. So with that said, goodbye everybody. Bye everybody.